to this now is because of the potential for the Bundys to get involved.
And you know the Oregon lawmaker who was caught on camera saying this?
They say, I'm at the west entrance, that somebody might exit that door.
Before opening said door to violent protesters? Well, now a bunch of his fellow Republicans want him out. Here's the story. Hey everybody, as the flowery handwriting says, I'm Maggie Vespa. Welcome to The Story on this Monday. Dan Haggerty is back tomorrow. Fear not. But no matter who's here, you guys know the concept of our show remains the same. Your feedback drives our coverage, and per usual, all the ways to contact us, including that hashtag HeyDan, are at the bottom of your screen. So reach out with your questions, your comments, your oh-so-hot takes. I promise you, we want it all. And that being said, let's dive right in, because I think it's safe to say, this almost doesn't even need to be said, we've all collectively been really anxious for the past year and a half or so. A big part of that is obviously the pandemic. But now that restrictions are lifting and people are vaccinated and we're heading into summer, a lot of us have something new to worry about. Fire season, especially after the disaster across Oregon last year. So all this week, we're focusing on wildfire coverage here on The Story and taking a deep dive into what the science tells us you can actually expect. So let's kick things off with meteorologist Joe Ranieri.
Oregon and much of the Pacific Northwest is heading into fire season dry. Very dry. In fact, we just saw the driest meteorological spring on record. That goes from March 1st to May 31st. Because of the lack of rainfall,
we are expecting to be an active season. This due mainly to the extreme drought conditions that are pervasive across the western United States going into this season.
In March, we only saw over 1.5 inches of rain. April was the driest on record with only 0.39 inches. Last month, just over 1/2 inch. Those 3 months combined add up to about 2.5 inches of rain. In a normal spring, we should get over 9 inches during those 3 months. Now there is a lot of concern heading into summer.
So with that dryness in the background, we are concerned about the condition of the fuels that are out there.
Eric Wise is a predictive service meteorologist with the Northwest Interagency Coordination Center. He says the early start to our warm weather that we saw in April and May is why we're going to see a big risk across the state. Remember how great our snowpack was this past winter? In mid-February, Timberline had a base of 154 inches, and the snow down in Government Camp was measured in feet. That snowpack that melts off and keeps our streams and rivers running in the summer quickly evaporated when temperatures started to warm up over the last couple of months.
We're expecting the west side to also join into an above normal risk situation for significant fire development.
The big concern this summer is going to be along the east side of the state, where they're currently seeing an extreme drought or an exceptional drought, especially in parts of southern Oregon.
We've had a very dry spring. So a lot of the life fuels like grasses and bushes are drying out more rapidly. So that's not good either, right? So we have those negative issues.
It's not just how dry things are over on the east side of this state that is a concern heading into the summer months.
If we do get a lot of storms coming up on top of an active monsoon season, we could get a lot of additional ignition, especially out in areas that are hard to reach.
The ignition concerns he's talking about are the lightning strikes that could come from those monsoon storms that start to arrive in the summer. A summer that's expected to be a busy one for crews. Joe Ranieri, KGW News.
All right, so we should note, as part of our week of wildfire coverage, we are partnering with the Santiam Hospital for this week's Hey Help campaign. They run a group called Santiam Service Integration that basically helps wildfire victims in the Santiam Canyon area, which, if you remember, was one of the hardest hit areas in the state last year. If you want to help out, just point your phone's camera right now at that QR code on your screen. It'll take you to a link to donate. And you can also just go to kgw.com/heyhelp. We're calling this a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount, no matter how small. It all helps. The money that you donate, by the way, will go toward helping these victims with housing, health care, food assistance, other basic needs. And this program, we should note too, also helps them navigate insurance and FEMA applications. And on that note, let's turn to our big story. Now, you heard Joe talk about in that piece just how dry it is across Oregon. Well, one region in particular is really suffering. Do you see that dark red on this map here, kind of toward the bottom? That's the Klamath Basin, which is in what's called exceptional drought right now. Among other things, that means there's just not enough water to go around, point blank. So last month, the feds shut off a main source of irrigation water for as many as 1,400 farms in the Klamath Basin. And as you can imagine, that hasn't gone over well with farmers, some of whom have ties to Ammon Bundy and are threatening to turn the water back on themselves. Here's Pat Doris.
The Klamath Basin stretches over 12,000 square miles in southern Oregon and northern California. In the early 1900s, marshlands around the massive Klamath Lake were drained and turned into farms. The lake supplies irrigation water, controlled by the federal government's Bureau of Reclamation. But it's also the source of water that endangered fish need to survive and Native American tribes need as well. This year, the Bureau of Reclamation said there's just not enough water and announced the farmers will get nothing, infuriating some.
Pretty soon we're going to get this water flowing. One way or another, this water's going to flow this year. We're not going to let the government steal our water.
That's Dan Nielsen, one of the farmers in the area. He and another man bought a small plot of land right next to something called the Headgate, which controls the flow of irrigation water out of the lake. Right now it's closed, and the canal the water would flow through is blocked by massive cement slabs that would stop most of the water even if someone did open the headgate.
The majority of farmers in the project don't support the action that these folks at the headgates plan to take. They don't support the illegal, trespassing on government property or removing the headgates.
Alex Schwartz is a newspaper reporter with the Herald and News out of Klamath Falls. For the past year, he's covered this one topic. He said many farmers see the threats to force the water to flow as a distraction.
They believe that it's not going to actually help them this year. It's not going to get them any additional water because a lot of crops have already been planted on, the basis of somebody has well water or, some districts are still able to divert some surface water from other places.
There's no question many farmers are being financially hurt by the lack of water. It's likely worse than the shortage of 2001, which saw tens of thousands arrive in the area to help with a bucket brigade, taking water from the lake to pour into the irrigation canal. A report to Congress noted that farmers at the time estimated their losses as totaling between $160 and $222 million. So far, this year, the federal government has offered $18 million to help out, and Congressman Cliff Benz, who represents the area, wants another $57 million for the farmers.
My heart goes out to the people of the Klamath Basin.
20 years ago, Governor Kate Brown was a lawmaker who visited the area during the Bucket Brigade. She's now asking for calm.
I want to encourage everyone to keep their efforts peaceful and to let them know that we are doing everything and we can to get resources there to assist.
But tensions seem to be mounting because of one name.
I think a lot of the reason why folks outside the basin are sort of being attracted to this now is because of the potential for the Bundys to get involved.
Ammon Bundy led the takeover at the Malheur Wildlife Refuge in Harney County in 2016, then beat federal charges connected to that takeover. Bundy has not shown up, but his supporters say he's offered to if needed. In the meantime, farmer Dan Nielsen and others set up this tent to hold rallies and spread interest. It's also why he bought that property so close to the irrigation headgate. Pat Doris, KGW News.
All right, so for those wondering, the Klamath tribes actually have senior water rights in that area to sustain endangered species of fish, like Pat said, that are both environmentally and culturally important. The fish are endemic to Upper Klamath Lake. They don't exist anywhere else. So if they don't have enough water to survive at that location, they go extinct. And they've been an important part of the lives of people in the tribe for generations.
It's scary. It's frustrating. We refer to the fish as being like the canary in the coal mine. This is just one indication because these fish are tough. They're hardy fish. If they're on the verge of going extinct, it shows you things are terrible here in the basin when it comes to water quality. And that ripples clear down through the system, through the salmon fisheries and steelhead fisheries to the mouth of the river. We're missing something. It's like a hole in our people. Everything, all this loss is culminated in emotional, spiritual loss to us. In a sense, we're trying to hold on to the past. We're trying to hold on to things that have helped us to be the people we are today. We are survivors. And those traditions.
So in the past, the courts have upheld the tribe's water rights to the lake, but even with a minimum amount of water, environmental damage has continued to affect the quality of the water and the fish populations. Well, now the conflict over water in the Klamath Basin goes back decades, we should point out, but that area has seen other environmental crises for even longer. So that being said, we dug into the KGW vault and we found a documentary from 1958 called Crisis in the Klamath Basin. It was actually produced by former Oregon Governor Tom McCall before he was governor. Take a look.
The land, the trees, and the marsh, these are three of the main elements of crisis in the Klamath Basin. A crisis brought to a head by congressional passage of Public Law 587 in 1954 to terminate nearly 100 years of federal trusteeship over the Klamath Indians. Then there's an additional element, the economy of the Klamath Basin, an economy that relies heavily on pine timber. What happens to that logging and milling economy if termination runs its course by April 1960, as prescribed by 587, causing as much as 4 billion feet of Indian timber to be sold in less than 2 years? With a perpetual source of 26% of the basin's timber, thus jerked out from under-sustained yield management, what of the future of the area's largest city, Klamath Falls, and what tomorrow awaits the town of Chiloquin in the heart of the reservation?
If you guys haven't heard old-timey Dan's impression of voices like that, you really should. It's great. Okay, so back in the early 20th century, the Klamath tribe was one of the wealthiest tribes in the country. Their economy was built from timber on their reservation and then also livestock. But then in 1954, the federal government passed Public Law 587, or the Klamath Termination Act. They terminated the tribe's federal recognition and dissolved them, forcing members to assimilate into the larger society. The tribes did not support the termination, but the government offered them a huge settlement to leave the reservation, $58,000 a person. And again, that was in 1954. So the majority of the tribe voted to take the money, but in order to actually pay that money, the government would have had to clear cut the reservation's forest.
The election just concluded was the high point of Tom Waters' 3 years of government work to facilitate termination. This tabulation of some 1,800 ballots in Klamath Falls showed that about 75%, or approximately 1,600 Indians, intended to withdraw. Under the Seton bill payment schedule of $58,000 per share, this totals $93 million, or $3 million above the ceiling, beyond which several influential U.S. senators say they will not go.
All right, so destroying the forest would have driven down the price of wood and hurt the Klamath Basin's timber industry, leaving them without a sustainable source of timber in the future. So Tom McCall showed the documentary to Congress, and they passed a bill that only allowed some of the wood to be sold, and the rest became most of the Fremont-Winema National Forest. As for the Klamath, though, the Termination Act devastated the tribes. They dealt with poverty and mental health issues that are still ongoing, but they were able to have their tribe restored in 1986. Always worth going into the vault. All right, let's get to another big story of the day. I know there are so many big stories, but here's another one. Oregon lawmakers right now are talking about expelling Republican Representative Mike Nearman from the legislature, kicking him out. And apparently, he's expecting this to happen. So let's back up a little bit. Last December, surveillance video caught Nearman opening a side door of Oregon's Capitol, letting far-right protesters into the building. It happened during a one-day special session, and you can see, and you've probably seen before, these protesters were pushed back out by state troopers. They didn't get very far. In April, Nearman was criminally charged with misconduct and trespassing over this. So the question has always been, did he do that on purpose, or was it a coincidental, wrong place, wrong time? He just had to leave. He opened a door. Oh no, look what happened sort of thing. Well, on Friday, OPB dug up a video that helped answer that question. It shows Representative Nearman speaking to a group of people less than a week before he opened that door. And someone asked him about the Capitol being closed to the public. And this is what he said.
We're talking about setting up Operation Hall Pass, which I don't know anything about, and if you accuse me of knowing something about it, I'll deny it, but there would be some person's cell phone, which might be not. That was just random numbers that I spewed out. That's not anybody's actual cell phone. And if you say, I'm at the west entrance during the session and text to that number there, that somebody might exit that door while you're standing there. But I don't know anything about that. I don't have anything to do with that. And if I did, I wouldn't say that I did.
Okay, so he mentioned the west entrance of the Capitol, which was indeed the same door that he was caught on camera opening to those protesters. I also, by the way, called the phone number he gave back on Friday, and I got an outgoing voicemail message that said, this is Mike Nearman's voicemail, so it seems that is his phone number. Now, since that new video has come to light, things have happened pretty fast. House Speaker Tina Kotek, who had already called for Nearman to resign, is appointing a special committee to consider whether Nearman should be expelled from the legislature. To do that, they need a 2/3 vote, which means it has to be bipartisan. And it's looking like it will be. House Republican leader Christine Drazen released a statement today saying, quote, all House Republicans have called on Representative Nearman to resign. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard in elected life, and his actions do not meet that standard. Now, up until this point, we really haven't heard anything from Nearman except for on that video. He's never returned our calls or emails, but apparently he did return Lars Larson's because he appeared on his show today, and he said this.
On Friday morning, they'll vote to expel me, and I believe they have the votes to expel me. The state of Oregon was founded in 1859, and since then, the House of Representatives has not seen fit to expel a single member. And so I will be the first. So someday you're going to be watching Jeopardy and somebody's going to say, who is Mike Nearman? And that's going to be the right answer to that.
Okay, so Nearman is not only expecting to get kicked out of the Oregon legislature, but he's actually making light of it on the radio. And he told Lars that he will, quote, pay the price for his, quote, civil disobedience. But he also called Speaker Kotek drunk with power. He didn't say anything about plans to resign, so we will, of course, keep watching what happens this week and keep you posted. What happens when pandemic protections for the homeless go away?
It's basically giving me a death sentence.
And when there's not enough services to meet this huge need.
They don't have programs for me right now and just telling me that they don't have anything for me.
First Salem's parks, now it's hotels. Hundreds are days away from literally getting turned out on the streets. When the story continues. Welcome back, y'all. We always go through your tweets and your emails and your feedback during the show, so keep them coming with the hashtag #HeyDan. And I should note, we got a lot of feedback on Friday's big story. It was about basically what happens when pandemic protections for the homeless go away. This is unfolding right now in Salem, and for more than a year, just to kind of back up, the city let people camp in its parks because of the coronavirus. It was the best way to socially distance during the pandemic. Well, last week, that leeway basically went out the window. The city argues COVID infection rates are down, vaccinations are up, and Salem wants its parks back. And as a result, crews are clearing camp after camp. And an estimated 571 people who have been living in those parks have to find somewhere else to go. So after seeing our story, Anka tweeted, "I didn't realize Oregon's houseless vaccine outreach program was so strong that 70% of unhoused individuals have received the COVID vaccine." Some sarcasm there, clearly. Pro-vaccine anti-Nazi MD, I assume that's a family name, tweeted, "This is so cruel," and Kristen applauded the city, writing, "These folks have ruined city parks and public spaces. Mentally ill/addicted need mandatory incarceration and treatment. Truly disabled should access existing services," end quote. So existing services, that is a key point. And the city of Salem was very transparent with us. There's just not enough to go around. So here's part 2 of our series on COVID protections that are slowly falling away. And we should note, the woman you're about to meet is the one who tipped us off to this entire thing.
If I'm on the street, I can lose my life.
Marianne Mario does not want to be doing this interview.
And it's just humiliating.
But days from being forced out of Salem's Shiloh Inn Hotel, Mario is desperate.
It's basically giving me a death sentence, either for my diabetes or the abuser that I had in 2011 that's going to be released from prison in August.
The state confirms a man convicted of assaulting Mario a decade ago is due to be released in August, and her diabetes is causing major complications. Doctors are talking about amputating her feet. Despite all of that, Mario's afraid she's days away from ending up back out on Salem streets.
And that's what scares me. It's a death sentence.
Last week, Mario got this letter from the Arches Project, a housing program run by the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency. The local nonprofit has been paying for her room at the Shiloh Inn since February. But no more. Mario has to be out by 11 a.m. on June 11th. That's this Friday. She says she's tried finding other housing, but resources in Salem are tapped out.
Everybody's giving me the runaround. They don't have programs for me right now.
The individual cases are heartbreaking. They're hard and they're real and valid.
Ashley Hamilton is the program director for Arches. The hotel program, funded by federal COVID relief dollars, is ending. Arches can't afford to keep it going forever. And frankly,
it is a temporary solution. So the program, designed as a one-time COVID response, is closing as COVID numbers decrease in our community, vaccine efforts increase.
It's the same rationale prompting the city of Salem to clear campers from its parks. KGW shot this video last week at Wallace Marine Park.
I said it's just been so horrible, and they have us working so hard with time limits.
Citing falling COVID infection rates and looming environmental concerns, officials are reversing a pandemic policy that let Salem's homeless camp in its parks. That means an estimated 571 people will have to find somewhere else to go. We asked the city's housing liaison if there are enough shelter beds in the area to house everyone.
No, it's such an urgent issue. There's not enough shelter beds in Salem. That's one of the urgent concerns that I know the city and our regional partners are all looking at.
Hamilton confirms that. She notes there is progress. A few new shelters are on the brink of opening, namely this Super 8 motel purchased by Arches earlier this year. Come fall, it'll open as a shelter and hold about 100 people, maybe more. That being said, 324 people were being housed through Arches hotel program, the one that's ending. Add that group to the hundreds forced out of parks. In short, a wave of people are likely headed back out onto Salem streets.
This is a crisis. We are experiencing a humanitarian crisis that is the likes of something we have never seen before. And the scary part is on some level, we know it's going to get worse.
That's exactly what Mario is afraid of. She has a job in retail and has spent months searching for housing or help. She says time and time again, she's told there's just not enough. All the while, the homeless camp down the street from the Shiloh Inn, just under I-5, has been growing. To Mario, it's like an omen, as if this is where she's bound to end up.
I don't want to die, but that's a sad reality, and I have to accept that, you know. And I'm doing everything I can. I've applied for every housing thing. I've got a job. I've done everything I can. I just don't know what to do. And that's why I called you guys. Because maybe if I get my voice out there, people are going to realize this is real.
All right, so Marianne Mario told me with everything she's going through, and we asked specifically, she was really nervous to speak out, but she thought that someone should, in her words, and she said that she's tired of being scared. And we should note, we'll stay on the push to open more shelter beds in Salem and keep you updated on that, as well as Marianne's progress. All right, let's switch gears and count some vaccines here on the story. According to the CDC, giant numbers, more than 2.35 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose. That works out to nearly 67% of the state's adult population. And the governor has said when we hit 70%, the magic number, the state can fully reopen. Over in Washington, the state is reporting 3.91 million people with at least their first dose. That's 63.7% of the state's 16 and older population. That's the metric that they're using. They're also aiming for 70%. But the governor has said they will reopen by the end of the month, no matter what. We'll obviously keep you posted with the absurdly large numbers. All right, keep sending in your questions and your comments with the hashtag HeyDan. We'll finish the story next. You guys, this is really sweet. Judy, Bruce, and Hattie all writing in asking, where is Dan? They miss Dan. We miss Dan too. We totally get it. He is back tomorrow. He had some nice time off with family, but he's back here in this chair tomorrow. We're all excited to see him. Thank you guys so much for watching the story on this Monday, and thank you for writing in. The news at 6:30 with Laurel Porter is up next.